Welcome to Parent Conversations and Merry Christmas, everybody. It's December. Our guest today is Dr. Kim Dwyer. She is the author of one of the books that we featured for Santa Stories called Rocky's Christmas Journey. So before we turn the time over to her, we want to say thank you. Thank you to the Bear River Health Department, to the Central Utah Public Health Department, and to the Davis County Health Department. The grants that they have make it possible for us to do what we are doing. If you are not able to join us live, catch the replay. Is usually posted in the Facebook communities within 24 hours, as long as I'm on top of things. And I think I'm on top of things this week. No promises for next week. But before I turn the time over to Dr. Dwyer, I'm just going to read a little bit about her. She is an author and licensed clinical psychologist. She lives in suburban Denver, Colorado, with her husband, 3 sons, and 3 dogs. So to visit her website, you can go to www.drkimdwyer, that's DRKIMDWYER.com. I'm going to turn the time over to her. And as always, if you have questions or comments, raise your hand, unmute yourselves, or put something in the chat and I'll be monitoring that.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here and for helping me share Rocky's Christmas journey. And I know we wanted to talk a little today about resiliency, which is a great tie-in to some of the themes in the book and just something, such a gift that we can help our kids learn resiliency as we're parenting them and guiding them. So I'm happy to talk just a little bit, field some questions, just kind of have an open conversation, however we want to best use this time. So Megan already mentioned my book, Rocky's Christmas Journey, just was published this fall, and it is inspired by a true story of a saw-whet owl. So it's a very, very small species of owl. They only weigh like roughly like 2.5 to 3 ounces. So like really, really tiny owl. And it was found in the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree last year. So the 2020, right? 2020 Christmas tree. And when I saw the news story, it just sparked this idea for a book, and I tried to walk away from it because I had other things I was working on, and the idea just kept coming back to me. And the book that developed from that, like I didn't set out to write a book about resiliency and emotions, but I think because of the work that I do, and I've done, I've worked in the field of mental health for quite a while now, those themes just, kind of came through the writing. So the story has the backdrop of Christmas. It's not really about Christmas. It's about this owl who transitions from being a baby owl, leaving his nest, to being a brave owl going out into the wild, to being this tiny owl who's pretty scared in this big city, that suddenly just to being an owl, not quite sure where he is, and then being helped and guided and kind of growing into his name and being given the name of Rocky that feels like it fits him. So that in a nutshell, that is the story of Rocky. I have a list of questions in the back for parents to have conversations with their kids about the book, because I do see reading together as such a great tool for a lot of things, but fosters connection. It helps with routine and ritual. If we're reading before bedtime, we can use books, especially books that have holiday or birthday or whatever time of year, seasonal themes to them, that can be part of our traditions, which helps us mark the passage of time and share things that are special about different times of year, different celebrations with our kids. And then kind of higher level skills, it helps us with teaching both what I would call emotional fluency, which is understanding feelings vocabulary, what the words are, what the expressions are, what the body language is, how we talk about feelings. So we can use books for that. And then also reading fluency, what we typically think of as probably fluency or literacy. When we're modeling by reading out loud to kids, we are providing the model for the sound symbol connection that helps children learn how to read. So there's so much going on when you just sit down and share a book together. There's a lot there.
That's true. Dr. Dwyer, we've had a couple of comments. Cheryl Lee said it's interesting that that this happened, that they found Rocky in the tree during 2020, a year when we all had to be a little more resilient than we've had to be in the past. And she also said that she loves that there's questions for parents in the book to help build resilience in kids.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I wrote the story. I wrote the story fast. like I read some news stories, got inspired, tried to walk away from it. Like within a couple hours was like, this idea is not going away. So sit down and write it. I sat down and did a little bit of quick research about that kind of owl to see if I could come up with an idea based on that, which is exactly what happened. So a saw-whet owl is called a saw-whet owl because its call apparently sounds like a saw on a wedding stone. So I've never heard a saw on a wedding stone. So I'm taking that. I'm just, taking that on faith that it does. I have actually pulled up what they sound like, and they almost sound like a fire alarms. It's like a high pitched, I'm not even going to try to do it, but you can go YouTube saw-whet owl and you'll hear what it sounds like. So it has this call that sounds like a saw on a wedding stone. And we're talking about a story where a tree got cut down and winds up in the center of New York City with this owl in it. So I just decided Rocky heard that saw on the wedding stone before the tree was cut down, figured it was another owl, went back to sleep, woke up in the city. So that's kind of the story that I came up with. But yes, definitely like that resiliency of we've all had to change. Most people in some way or another in 2020 had to change and pivot, whether it's the way they do business, the way they do home, the way kids are schooled, all of those things have required us to be resilient.
Absolutely. Does anybody else have any comments or questions right now? Okay.
So I can go ahead and share a little bit more about reading together and how we can use that to help develop resiliency. So like I said, I'm almost thinking about this, like if you've ever seen this, like this triangle, that's like this hierarchy of needs where we've got the most basic needs at the bottom and like these higher level needs are up at the top of the triangle. We have to satisfy these basic needs first.
Yes.
So when I think about reading together in that way. So like, if we go from like the most basic need that gets fulfilled when we sit with a child and read together, it's connection. So we are inherently social. We have these mirror neurons in our brain that help us to mirror other people's emotions and expressions. Babies come into this world already understanding how to understand emotion for a good part. There's stuff that we teach them, obviously, but they're kind of hardwired already to connect, to find faces and connect with faces, make eye contact. All that kind of stuff is already happening as soon as we're born. So when we do connect with others, some interesting things happen in our nervous system. So we have a chemical in our body called oxytocin. It's released for a variety of reasons, but one of the times it's released is when we have connection and we feel good. So sometimes it's called the love drug or the hug drug. So we can get a burst of oxytocin when we give somebody a hug. We can get it spending time together. We can get it looking at family photos. We can get it any kinds of things that are connection related. So when you sit on the side of your child's bed at night or get into a rocking chair together, with a kiddo on your lap, we're connecting and you're going to feel good as the caregiver. Child is going to feel good as like the recipient of that care and time together. So that connection piece we can help build by sharing those stories together. We go up a little bit on the hierarchy and we've got routine and consistency. So I think as parents, we have really good models for routine and consistency when our children are really small. I'm not sure we do a great job of teaching parents how to incorporate routine and consistency into their parenting as our kids get older. Like I'm thinking like middle school and into the teenage years. So I know with my kids, when they were little, we always read books together at night before bed. And when you look at helping a body, whether it's a small body or an adult sized body, when we're trying to get a body ready for sleep, we need to start sending the signals that it's time to wind down. And everything that we do in like that hour or so leading into bedtime, if it's consistent and happens, most of the nights, it becomes a cue for getting ready for sleep. So if every night I clean up my kitchen, I let my dogs out, I go wash my face, brush my teeth, do whatever like that. I read a book quietly in bed, and then I turn off the lights. All those steps, if they're done over time, in a fairly consistent way, they become cues to my brain. She's getting ready to go to sleep, start winding down. The same thing for kids. So if we have a routine of, we're going to brush teeth, put on PJs, take a bath, whatever you do at nighttime. Maybe we're going to go say goodnight to the dog or the cat or to whoever's, if there's older kids who are still up, then we go upstairs and we read together, we cuddle, maybe we turn off the lights and listen to some music for a little bit, and then we say goodnight. All those steps are preparing that child for sleep so that they can hopefully go to sleep a little faster. I saw something pop up while I was talking.
Yeah. Shirley responded again. She was commenting about the owl. She was doing a little research and saw, oh, hold on a second. Now I have to scroll. This little owl had to be sent to a facility that helps animals recover. And she says, what would our homes need to be that facility for our kids when they have been through trauma? And then before we talk about that, I'm going to go on to her next comment, because I was going to say something about that. We have an adventure for the hug drug that you talked about, the oxytocin. Did I say it right?
Yep.
Yep. It's called 8 hugs for 8 seconds per day. And she shared the link. And I just have to say, physical touch is one of my love languages. It's my number one love language. And I'm a single adult at this point, so I don't have that from a spouse, but I have grandkids, and I have 2 2-year-old granddaughters, and they live very close. So I get a lot of that, because I have one of them that just wants to hold me all the time when I'm there. Even if I'm holding her in my arms, she says, "Hold me, Grandma." I said, "I am holding you." But so that's kind of how I get that little shot in the arm of my hug drug.
Yeah. And you can get it, like, honestly, you can get it by giving yourself a little muscle massage, a little bit of deep pressure. You can get it by looking at family photos. You can get it by connecting, like, through distance. If you don't have loved ones who are nearby, you can connect over Zoom and all the kind of stuff. I think probably, I don't have research for this, I'm kind of making an educated guess, but I think, if you looked at family photos and thought of pleasant memories, it probably would release oxytocin in your system.
I imagine. I spent a lot of time talking on the phone with my sister who's on the East Coast. So
there you go.
Get that in there too.
Do it. And the interesting thing with oxytocin, it actually has protective factors for the cardiac muscle. So you're actually protecting your heart muscle. It's so interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
Humans have equated the heart, which really doesn't have a whole lot to do with emotions, to emotions. And yet when we have these positive emotions of connection, we actually are protecting our heart muscle. So
literally. Wow.
Yes, literally. It's kind of crazy. Somebody way back somewhere knew more than we thought they knew.
That's true. Our bodies are amazing. So, if unless you have a different direction to go, I like the thought of talking about what our homes need to look like to be the facility for our kids when they have been through trauma.
Yeah. I think that's a great question. And I think we also have to be mindful that a lot of times if our kids are going through something traumatic, the grownups around them also are. So if we think about COVID and 2020 and pandemic and, all the shifts and changes that were happening to our kids, they were happening to us as the grownups around them. Even if you feel like you weren't particularly affected because maybe you're an essential worker, you're still working outside of the home, life went on, your stress level, I'm sure was much higher. My husband and I are both psychologists. He works in a facility that does not close, and he is there. I shifted to telehealth. He continued to work in an office, which meant he was exposed to high levels of, potential contagion every single day. It creates a lot of stress on the entire family, even if, we think the routine is pretty stable and normalized. But when you think about when there's trauma, again, go back to what I said a moment ago about that pyramid, like what are the basic needs? Like our basic needs are to make sure people are safe. And with children, some of that is just talking to them. Really hard thing with a pandemic related trauma is it's very hard to know like who's safe and who's not safe, and where to get that information. So I think a big thing, especially with small children, is to watch exposure to information, to know like your news sources that are coming in, to talk about things with kids to the level that they're asking questions and needing information. And maybe you don't need to provide every single detail beyond that fact, because it's outside of, their curiosity level, their interest level. It's probably outside of what they're developmentally able to process and understand and cope with. They need to know that they're safe, that mom and dad are safe, that the choices that we're making, if it's we're going to stay home for a bit, we're going to wear a mask, we're going to, limit the parties that we go to, whatever that might be, that we're doing these things to make safe choices to keep our bodies safe. And also, if there are things that we need to handle, we'll handle them as a family moving forward. So yeah, I think that safety and like open communication, but not like free, what's the expression for that? Like not all of the information that we have. And you're gonna sit down and tell a 4-year-old what the death toll is, I hope, because that's not going to be helpful. It's gonna be really scary, to a little kid. Adults, we can hopefully compartmentalize that, recognize that we're making the best choices that we can, but like a small child is not going to be able to understand that. So kind of,
we don't want to turn on the fire hose.
exactly. Yeah. So kind of controlling the information, controlling the exposure to media, trying to keep the routine as consistent as possible. That's an important one too, when there's been, something traumatic going on. And then, when there's trauma, I'm thinking not something that may be impacting all of us, but a child has medical trauma, or there's been an accident or a loss or something, talking specifically about that and seeking out some support. We have a lot of different communities, it's different agencies, but we have a lot of agencies and resources available to support families in talking about what's going on and getting help and support. So like if you don't know how to access that, you can start by asking your pediatrician. Usually they're pretty good and pretty well connected with what resources are in a particular community.
Fabulous. Okay. Any questions so far? You guys are quiet today. All right, I'll ask one. My kids are all grown and gone. What's the best way for me as a grandparent to help instill or help build that resiliency in grandkids, especially when my adult children, their parenting styles differ from what I wish they were.
Right. Yeah. I think resiliency at its core is having this deep internal knowledge that I can do it and I can keep going. And even if it's hard, I can keep going. And I've often said that like the path to parenting difficulties is paved with good intentions. Like we mean well, we're trying. And, my kids are, how old are my kids? 13, 17 and a half, and 20. So my kids are not little anymore. I survived 3 small boys and made it to this point. But it's a whole lot easier. And I tell parents that I'm working with, in therapy, I tell them this all the time. It's really easy for me to sit in a chair and tell you what to do. It's a whole lot harder to go out there and do it with your own kids. But essentially, resiliency in parenting is, I have faith in you. I know you can do these things. And also, until you are ready to do them independently, I'm providing a safety net around you for that. So I'm not going to let you drown. I'm not going to throw you off the dock into the deep end of the lake. We're going to figure out how to do this together. And as I see you're able to do more, I'm going to support you in doing more independently on your own. So a lot of times I think building resiliency can look like letting a child lead, and being curious, rather than jumping in and immediately stopping them. Oh, that's too sharp for you. You can't touch that. Or, you let mom do this part because I can do it better. Yes, there are times when it's a safety situation and we should definitely jump in, but there are also like in the way we even react to that. So I could imagine a small child wants to cook in the kitchen. They reach up to help. They grab something. Quite honestly, my immediate response would be like, oh my gosh, don't touch that. That's, I don't want you to get hurt. Probably a better response to encourage resiliency would be, oh, that's something that we have to be careful with. Why don't we hold that together? So like getting that alarm out of our voice, because when we communicate alarm, that's fear, right? So we're going to set up this dynamic of like avoid, And then we don't have resilient kids. We have kids that are like entirely relying on us to do things for them when it might be developmentally appropriate for them to start learning that. I saw this video the other day that it really bugged me, quite honestly. It was one of those TikTok videos, like this is supposed to be funny, and it was a guy was holding, I don't know, the child looked like they were maybe a year or so, like toddler, not much more than a baby, and was walking holding the baby. So the baby couldn't see where they were walking and walked towards a doorway and slammed his hand against the doorway. So you heard like this thunk. It was not it's not the baby, it was the guy's hand. And then he looked at the baby and said, "Oh no, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" And the baby bursts into tears. Well, of course the baby bursts into tears because they're looking they're looking to the grown up for, am I safe or not? And the grown up just communicated, you're not safe. And small child's brain connects thunk with you're not, this feedback from the grown-ups around them of you're not safe, and now suddenly they're sobbing. So in a nutshell, like that is the opposite of resiliency. That is teaching, that kind of reaction, and that internalization of that reaction is teaching a child the world is not a safe place to be. It's not predictable. And honestly, in that situation, I can't even rely on what my body's telling me, because the people around me are communicating that I'm not safe, even though my body felt safe in that moment. So
Sounds like gaslighting.
yeah, it does. It's gaslighting, baby. And yeah, I hadn't connected that word with it, but that's what it is. And I think that's why it bothered me so much. But what we want to do is the opposite of that. So we want to kind of be curious, like a kid stumbles, rather than, even though it's from a good place, rushing in, "Are you okay? Let me help you." We want to say something like, "Oops, we want to narrate it. Like, oops, you stumbled. Are you okay?" Or not even asking, like that part is, erase that from the transcript. I shouldn't have said that part. Just, "Oops, you stumbled." And then wait for them to say something. "Oh, my knee hurts." Or, or a small child who can't communicate that, like, are there tears, or do they get up and keep toddling along and they're okay?
I had an
So
experience like that just the other day with one of my grandkids who, I can't remember, she bonked into something, and I think I said, "Oh, are you all right?" And my daughter says, "Mom, she was fine until you asked her."
yeah. And again, like from a body standpoint, like how fascinating that our brains are so intricately wired that when we hear alarm from somebody we trust, we internalize it as, "Oh gosh, something bad happened to me." And we have an emotional reaction that matches that.
Yeah. There's another one of our discovery adventures I thought about as you were talking. It might be related, might not be related, but it's called redefining failure.
Mm.
There's a lot of talk now about celebrating failure and saying, "Hey, hey, you say that again, Shirley."
It's about celebrating the effort.
Celebrating the effort,
Yeah.
yes. So I can't help but think that celebrating the effort, regardless of the outcome, would help build resiliency in our kids.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Celebrating the effort, celebrating, I want to say like celebrating like the opportunity. So if we quote fail, however we're defining that, we've just created a different opportunity to looking at something in a different way. Um, it's like I'm thinking of a bunch of expressions that maybe they don't apply so well, but the idea of, instead of staring so long at the perceived failure, that we miss the opportunities that are flying by us as a result of that failure. Like there's information to be gleaned from what doesn't work. And if we can take that and either persevere, or maybe like we shift maybe it means the goal wasn't really a realistic goal for us. We shift the goal and go into a different direction.
I like that. Watch those opportunities in the midst of maybe the one that didn't work out so well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Anybody else? So, I know you guys have questions out there. I know you do. You guys are full of questions all the time. So
I've got one, Kim.
Mhm.
I'm not very good with words. So I know that a lot of people mistake one emotion for something else. They'll mistake one lifestyle for something else. Like a really cliche one is people mistake being really busy with being really productive, even though they're
Right.
just like, running around a bunch, but they're not actually getting stuff done. Is there like an emotion or a mindset that people sometimes mistake for resiliency? Like I've met some people that are just like stone faced all the time and like can't express their emotion. They're like, this is because
Mhm.
we're emotionally invincible, but like in reality, they're just like something else?
Yeah. I think what comes up for me around that, there's being resilient, and then there's like powering through at all costs. I think those can maybe get mistaken, and the powering through at all costs, if we're doing it, I'm not thinking about kids as much right now, I'm thinking more about adults, but I'm sure there are kids who do this. If we are, powering through at all costs, we might not be listening to our body's signs and our body's voice telling us like, hey, slow down, like you're off course, or this is too much, body's stressed out and needs a break. I think resiliency is the piece that we just talked about. Like, can I shift my goal when it's appropriate to shift my goal? Can I change direction? Can I be like flexible? I was gonna say flexible and resilient in the face of things not going as expected, as opposed to like kind of I'm locked in on this goal and it's going to happen no matter what, even if it doesn't seem to be working for us very well. And what you talked about, kind of suppressing emotion. I think a lot of times with uncomfortable emotion, if it's like fear, sadness, even anger, conflict, often we avoid it because we don't know what to do with it. Like it's challenging to do. It doesn't feel good. It's challenging to figure out what to do with it. And to that same idea of like pushing that down and just kind of staying the course. I think the emotion comes up to tell us something. And if we're having a lot of strong emotions, especially strong negative emotions about something, those emotions are there for a reason. If we can like stop, dial it down a little bit, tune into what's going on with ourselves and ask like, why am I afraid right now? Why am I angry right now? There's some information to be gleaned there that, may help with a course adjustment for whatever it is that you're working on, or may help, to shift a goal or to figure out something else that's going to be a support. So I could see both of those things happen. So either avoiding the emotion and not getting the information that we might get from the emotion, or like staying locked on a goal at all costs.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Sure, absolutely.
I hadn't thought about the difference between powering through and resilience. Thanks, Alex, for your question. That made me realize something about myself.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that earlier today, and sometimes, especially people that tend to be a little bit more of the rule followers, and like if you really have this instilled value of like, I honor my commitments, sometimes even that commitment we make to our own goal, or frankly to somebody else's goal or a workplace goal, it can be a positive quality to honor commitments for sure, but if it gets taken to the extreme of, I'm honoring that initial commitment to the exclusion of using reason and judgment as I go, maybe that's not so good for us anymore.
We have a message from Catherine. Can you talk more about routines and resilience? How do you help kids with shifts in routines?
Yeah, so routines can help with a lot. I think resilience, like building resilience, probably comes in, it probably gets helped both by having the routines and by having shifts in the routines. And I'll explain what I'm thinking with that. So when we have routines, we're basically creating a world that's predictable for kids. And if the world's predictable, we feel safe. So we're communicating to kids, these things typically happen this way. And then the child's brain can start to understand, okay, when we go to school, here's what's expected of me. When it's, when mom says it's time for dinner, set the table, or whatever your dinner time routine is, I know it's expected from me. And ultimately, I think kids want to be successful and they want to please the people around them. So I can do these things, people are happy that I set the table the way I was asked to do it. I feel good about myself for doing that. And that's going to build confidence. So I think probably resilience and confidence are tied together pretty closely. We start building up sense of self, self-worth, not just based on achievement, but based on there's something good about me, about my character that's going to be there, whether what I do works or it doesn't work. 'Cause it does take some core self-worth and some confidence to say, like, I tried this thing and I failed. And now now I'm not sure what to do, I need help, or now I'm going to try it a different way and see what works, as opposed to I tried this thing and it failed and now I'm stuck looking at this thing that failed, and I can't move forward from it. So I think we can use the routines to build up that sense of confidence, and that consistency. And then when we need to shift a routine, because that's life, things shift. Some of us knowing your child, some kids get really upset when routines are shifted. But maybe, like, if you have a child who gets really upset when routines are shifted, maybe helping them to, like, play. If you can bring some play and curiosity into it, like, hey, what would it be like? I mean, this would be kind of fun for me. What would it be like if we ate dessert first? Isn't that crazy? Could we maybe do that? Could we do that on a Saturday night? Because that would be fun. Like, that's a really small, simple, like, playful way of shifting the routine. Other routines that get shifted, like, hey, mom's not picking you up from school today, the babysitter's going to pick you up. That could be scary for a kid who's kind of regimented about how their routines go. So talking about it ahead of time, making sure that it's communicated, and that as best as you can. I think what you want to communicate, like, in that situation, is that even if me, your parent, is not with you, I've made arrangements for you to be safe. So that's the ultimate piece that you're communicating, is that we're going to do things in a way that are still going to be safe, even if they're not the same as they were last time.
Awesome. We've got a couple comments coming in. Shirley says it's a fine balance between using routines effectively and also helping kids to learn to cope when their routines or anything in life changes. Let's see. Maybe you're a hard worker, but
Being able to
I missed something. Hold on a second. I keep having to scroll because got lots of messages coming in all of a sudden. Being able to adapt is also a great quality kids need to learn. Awesome. Okay, Emily, building off of Alex's comment, my mom always says that our greatest strength can also be our greatest weakness. Maybe you're a hard worker, but you overextend yourself and aren't available for your family. Maybe you're flexible and are too available for people. Maybe you're a peacemaker, but don't like confrontation to the point of avoiding making a return to the store. She says that was her dad. Haha. Okay, back to Shirley. She says, so true. Too much of anything on both ends is too much.
Yeah, absolutely. I've often thought that our strengths in one situation are also our weaknesses. And I think it's probably about figuring out what the boundary is, and where that strength, where it's best for that strength to show up, and where that strength, again, is like we're continuing on something that we should have course corrected on it already. Instead of taking the signals from the world around us and from our own body and from our emotions, we're continuing to try to force it and make it work, and it's just not working. And I think that's also, like, if we can use those negative emotion states when they come up for us, whether it's, again, fear, resentment, anger, regret, any of those are really telling us something. And I think they usually tell us something about our boundaries and something about our values, and some clash between, either internally, like our own value system, and like two areas of our value system. So maybe values around my family and values around my career are in conflict, and that makes it hard to have balance between them. Or maybe values like that I hold, and the people around me, maybe it's in my family, maybe it's in my workplace, they're prioritizing a different value than what I would prioritize. And that creates conflict and uncomfortable emotional states from that. And if we can just kind of be curious about that, and then this is where the mindfulness piece can really come in. Like, can I just stop and notice what's going on? What emotion am I feeling? What's my body telling me right now through my emotions? What are other times I've had this emotion? Where does this emotion hang out in my body? Like, just be curious about it. And I feel like when we do that, and then maybe like sit in silence for a small amount of time and just ask, like, why are you here right now? Anger, resentment, or fear. What do you need me to hear? often we have the answer. We have the answer if we really get quiet and really listen, as opposed to just plowing ahead, like the steamroller that has to just do it no matter what. But if we can really listen to that with mindfulness, without judgment, we might have a lot of wisdom in there for ourselves to hear.
Our bodies are quite amazing. And yeah, they will warn us. In fact, I had a recent experience that caused me to read a book about a specific psychological subject. And the author said that quite often our bodies know before our minds know something. And yes, listening to our bodies and just like you said, asking ourselves those questions.
No.
Why do I feel like this? And where is it in your body? Because yeah, that's quite, the words left me, but self-reflective, that'll work.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of self-reflection, Shirley says, I find self-reflection and self-awareness to be fascinating. Sometimes I'm really surprised at the things I notice about myself. Yes, absolutely.
And we can help kids with this too, because I do think being able to be self-reflective and like generating that wisdom is only going to help with resiliency, because we're going to feel more confident and grounded in who we are. So we can ask kids when they're having a big emotion, often with little ones, it's pretty obvious because it's hard for them to tell us with their words. So they tell us with their bodies. But we can say, hey, it looks like you're having some big feelings. What feelings might you have? And we can help really small ones with some of the words. So like I had a grad school professor who used to talk about like having the crayon box. So, the basic emotions are happy, mad, sad, and scared. And if you go to a restaurant, I don't even know if they're still doing this now with COVID, but if they give you like a little kids menu with like the little 4-pack of crayons, that's your happy,
depending
mad,
on where
sad.
you go, you get that. Yep.
That's your happy, mad, sad, and scared. And then once we start combining, so for little kids, maybe that's all you give them. Tell me, is it happy? Is it mad? Is it sad? Is it scared? And then you can help them by like drawing faces, happy face, sad face, a little bit mad face, maybe is like a wiggly line. Scared face is maybe like an open mouth. Kids are good at this now because of all the emojis on phones, and even little kids who don't use phones have probably seen some of that stuff. So you can do that. You can make like a really simple chart and stick it on the fridge, like, show me how you're feeling right now, and they can point. Slightly older kids can point, and then they can use like a 1 to 3 scale. Like, are you at a 1, or maybe a 0, you don't have that feeling at all, or are you at a 3, which is a whole lot? Older kids, you can do a scale from 0 to 10 and get a little bit more refined and start to identify, like, if I'm mad, if I'm on the mad scale, what's the point where I really can't talk about it anymore and I need to do something to settle my body down? Maybe it's a 7. And I always call that like the point of no return. Like, once we hit the point of no return, we can't sit in the kitchen and talk about it and try and figure it out because you're not in a space to problem solve. That's when, let's walk the dog around the block, or let's go put on some music and dance the feelings, until they settle enough that we can talk about the feelings. Or maybe it's a time that you need to go cry, and that's okay too. If you just need to cry for a little bit and get a hug, and then we talk about it. So, those are some strategies with little kids, but then we go from that 4 crayon box to the 64 crayon Crayola box with all the crazy color names in it. And we get like these complicated feelings, like excitement is happy and nervous at the same time, probably more happy than nervous, but there's a little bit of tension in there. Otherwise we wouldn't feel excited. And embarrassed is a little bit of sad, a little bit of scared, and a little bit of like reflection on past behavior, and concern about social judgment. So they get complicated. And, for a lot of adults who, don't work in fields where you're thinking about emotions all the time, it might be kind of foreign, but to really think about like, okay, so when I say I'm resentful, like what exactly does that mean? And how can I share that in language that a child will understand? You can also find, if you just like go online into a search bar and type in like a feelings wheel, you can find some great graphics from like teachers and therapists that you can print out with just like feelings words to help kids, to understand that. So like I've seen a feelings wheel one that kind of, if you could think about like pie slices on the wheel, like towards the center, it's those basic happy, sad, mad, scared. And as you go out from the center, it gets more complicated and, different combinations of feelings for these fancier feelings words. I've also seen some, if you have like a favorite character, like I've seen like a Lego feelings chart where it's all Lego characters. So like the faces are different on the little Lego minifigures or whatever they're called. I've seen some that are like based on the Inside Out movie. I've seen them that are like Minecraft, just, whatever character your child likes or TV show. If you do a little digging around, you can probably find something related to feelings to use to help have that conversation.
That's awesome. Yeah, we can teach kids to get in touch with their own emotions and why.
Mhm.
I can see that definitely help a lot. It helps me as an adult to be able to do that. And the word that keeps coming to my mind is, as far as resilience in all of us, is the word trust. Can I trust myself? And can I trust those around me, my support system?
Right. And that's so key, because the way I think one of the ways we teach children to trust themselves is by showing them that the world can be trusted around them. So showing them that the adults around them are going to, think back to like the most basic things that we teach kids is, if you look at like these developmental theories, it's trust versus mistrust. Can I trust that, the adults around me are going to keep me safe and warm and fed and take care of my basic needs? So as we teach a child that, yes, you can trust your caregivers, then they're also internalizing pieces of that and learning that they can trust themselves and that their needs are real, and that when they are crying because they're hungry, it's because they're hungry. It's not just that they're crying out of the blue, and they start to, we start to learn to trust ourselves and trust our own judgment and start paying attention to our feelings. So like, when we've all had these experiences where it's like, yeah, I'm not really sure why I don't like this thing. I just have this gut feeling that something's off. Like that is valuable information.
Absolutely.
And then we can hopefully help empower kids that when they're in situations later where maybe something doesn't feel safe, like they turn the volume up really loud on that, not in a way to stress that like the world's not a safe place, but like if I feel like generally the world is a safe place, when I have that signal that it's not, that's worth listening to and being really curious about what's going on that I'm not feeling safe.
I like that. Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments at this point? I love talking about this. Shirley says she too, if she had a voice.
We can talk about it some more when voices return.
That's right. That's right. I mean, she'd have to stop using it for a few minutes, and she's too busy to stop talking altogether. So, do you have anything else that you'd like to share with us today?
No, just thank you for being here, and thank you for getting the information out that you guys do to support parents. And parents, thank you for tuning in and being open to exploring different areas of how to support your kids. The books that I referred to, so my children's book is Rocky's Christmas Journey, and you guys featured it, so you can find, I'm about to watch it as soon as we're done here, the Santa Stories.
Don't judge Mrs. Claus too harshly.
I think it looks great so far. I just have this still frame on my other computer screen right now. I'll watch it afterwards.
I'm too young to be Mrs. Claus.
You definitely are. So
thank you. Before we go, talk a little bit about your plan with us and Mindful Monday.
I will. I'm looking. Hold on a second. I'm gonna disappear for a minute.
Okay.
I'm trying to find my book. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So I have another book that came out this fall. This is a proof copy, so it's got this ugly gray line across the front, but it's called Mindful Mondays, Transforming the Everyday to Claim Calm and Reduce Stress. And what I wanted to do in this book is to take these concepts in mindfulness and make them super applicable, because formal mindfulness meditation is a great tool, and we can't always do it on the fly. and when I think we need to pull in those tools the most, is when we're out there living our life. So a famous author in the whole mindfulness area is John Kabat-Zinn, and he has a book called Full Catastrophe Living. And that's basically what it is. Like, you're out there, you're living the full catastrophe. What do you do to be mindfully aware, and to use all that wisdom in your own body in those moments? So Mindful Mondays is all full of strategies. There's some basic, some kind of introductory beginner strategies that are a little bit more about sitting in mindful meditation, but then most of the book is about strategies to use kind of on the fly when you're out there living your life. And so Shirley and I got talking about all this, and when she had reached out to me, I'm going to be doing some Mindful Mondays for families tips that you all can, share and put out there. So using some of those strategies, but specifically giving them a little bit of a twist or tweak to support families. So ways that you can model for kids, ways that you can do activities with kids that have a component of mindful awareness, as you're sharing them together. So yeah, and that's part of resiliency also, is like how we model for kids. Like, this is what I do when I'm stressed. This is what I do when I realize I made a mistake. This is what I do when I feel that my emotions are so big that I'm at that point of no return, and I need to do something to regroup and take care of myself before I can problem solve. So that's what Mindful Mondays is about, and I'm looking forward to it.
We are too. We'll be working with Dr. Dwyer throughout 2022. And I've seen a copy of your book floating around here. I'm going to have to go grab it. Thank you. And if somebody wanted to get a hold of you and for anything personal, what's the best way to contact you?
It's my website, which is www.drkimdwyer.com. When you go there, there's like this, I think they call it like a splash page. I don't know. I'm not super techie. There's an intro page that will say, are you connecting with me because you're a potential therapy client? I also coach business owners in mental health. So I'll ask if you're a therapy client, a business coaching client, or if you're interested in my books. And if you click on the books, that will take you kind of to a hub where the books are featured. There's additional, blog articles. I've got some craft activity sheets up there for kids. Just additional information. And then there's a contact form on there that people could complete, or if you're trying to find my phone number through the therapy page, is the best way to find that. Yeah.
Awesome. Any final questions before we end? This has been fascinating. Like I said, I love the subject. I probably should have gone out in psychology. Anybody have any questions? Shirley has a question.
We included her Rocky page in the 55-page activity book.
Oh, it's a Christmas activity book, right? That we're talking about. Yeah, we have a Christmas activity book and the story of Rocky. The book itself is included as one of the activities. No, I'm saying this wrong.
Dr. Dwyer's activity for Rocky.
Your activity for Rocky. Okay.
The coloring
I got it
page.
right now. Okay. Yeah. So I'm sitting right here next to her so she can squeak out just a little bit. So
sounds painful. Drink lots of tea.
Lots of tea, Shirley. Okay. One more question. Yes. Oh, yes. So if last opportunity for questions, if anybody's got one. If not, we're going to go ahead and end today. And I'm just going to put a plug in for Santa Stories with Mrs. Claus. Starting tonight, we're going to do night 1 of 5 nights of the Wish book series. Really awesome. The photography in them is wonderful, and anyway, be a lot of fun. And next week we'll hear from, the plan is to hear from the author of that set of books. So and it's a husband and wife team that did this the Wish book series. She's the author, he's the photographer, and the subject is their daughter, and their daughter will be narrating. So it'll be a lot of fun. Thank you, Dr. Dwyer, for sharing that with us. Like I said, I love this subject. I've probably should have studied this in school. But anybody else have anything they want to say before we end?
Thank you very much. I thought this was really good.
Thank you, and catch the replay. Have a good week.
Thank you.